When I saw on my timesheet that they were happy to pay me £9.50 an hour, that's when I was even rejoicing. I was even praising God. Just sitting here like, okay, maybe I need to go on a fast. Maybe I need to fast and pray. That's what it is. Hey guys, and welcome back to Tinu Talks. Guys, I feel like I haven't even done a sit down chat with me video, so this is exactly what it is. So this is just a little bit backwards, but I'm introducing myself, what I do, how I got here, how I'm in Dubai, how I paid for it, and how I actually got into property. So the actual title of this video is basically to explain to everybody on the internet how I went from working a 0-hour contract in agency and also being a broke university student with around £3 in my account. Actually, there was £1. I think I had like one time I had like £4.84. If I learn how to insert screenshot inserted here, like genuinely I had £4.84 in my account at the end of working. Like, it was really that deep. I was around 19 at the time. Things were looking rough, guys. Things were genuinely looking rough, and like it was just a thing of, I was at uni, I was at Warwick Uni. It's a great uni, great Russell Group uni, but I kind of realised like maybe in my second year that I didn't actually want to do law. So I studied sociology with the intention of doing what's called a GDL, which is a graduate law conversion course basically that you do after your undergrad. And like I was gonna go ahead and do it, but then I just realised, Tina, you actually don't like reading. Like you actually like, boy, you don't actually enjoy reading. And like the only reason that I wanted to do something like that was because I wanted to have a better financial situation for myself, in the sense that, okay, she's gone to a Russell Group university. As a result of that, she's now doing really well. She's a lawyer. Like, I just like that. And obviously African parents, like, oh, my daughter's a lawyer. Does that not sound like pleasing to you, right? That's exactly where I was at. So at the time, my life was a little bit of a mess, but this is even just the introduction. Let me even explain the preface of the video. So this video is simply all about how I went from a broke university student to now making 6 figures a year in my business in property entrepreneurship. So it all realistically started in the year 2020. This was the year that I was meant to get my A-level results, and I did get my results in the end. However, I actually never sat my A-levels. So for those of you guys who are watching from different countries, A-levels are basically like a form of qualification. It's like post high school, so it's optional to do A-levels, or you could do BTEC. I chose to do A-levels, and then from that you're going to get into a university of your choice. So I did my A-levels in Spanish, sociology and politics. I got an A star in sociology, B in politics, B in Spanish, and I had applied to the University of Warwick to do law with sociology, which is a 4-year degree, and I needed to get AAB in order to do that, and I got A star BB, which was very technically very close, and like with the UCAS points that I received, very technically they should have let me in, but they didn't. And I remember writing them a really long email. If I can find it, I'll tag it here, but if I can't, long story short, I was just like, I'm gonna work harder than you've ever seen anyone work in their life. Yeah, I'm that girl, I can do it, da 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 da. Bear in mind, this year Warwick lowered their grade boundaries quite significantly due to it being the pandemic, due to it being like people didn't sit their exams and all of that, so they were quite lenient. Like, some people were genuinely getting into Warwick with grades of B's and C's, and Warwick is typically known for only accepting people who got like A's, A stars, maybe like the slight B, like maybe 1 B out of it. That's why, you know, obviously law and sociology was AAB. So I'm now like emailing them, calling them, you know, hoping that they're going to let me into law. But for whatever reason, they were just like, well, unfortunately, you didn't get the grades. We're not going to let you into law. This is not something that we're going to be able to do. And I was just sitting here like, okay, maybe I need to go on a fast. Maybe I need to fast and pray. That's what it is. And after praying and all of that, like, they still didn't let me in. So I was like, okay, cool. They offered me sociology instead. I took sociology, and the plan, like I mentioned, was to do my graduate law diploma. Anyways, I at that point started having some slight doubts about law, because in being rejected, and rejection is always redirection, friends, okay? Rejection, the setback is a set up for the comeback, period. But in facing that rejection, I kind of started to question, why do I want to study law? Like, what are my genuine motives for studying law? And I kind of came to the conclusion that it was based on mainly people pleasing my African family. That doesn't sound right. My Nigerian family Okay, I come from a family of everyone who's really, really, really academically inclined. So some of my cousins are lawyers, some of them are in the medical field, like they're literally killing it, they're doing really well. And I kind of felt as though I wanted to live up to that. I didn't necessarily want to be like the black sheep in the family, and also I didn't necessarily know what else I could do. So growing up in school, I was quite good at literature, I was quite good at English. Maths wasn't a strong point for me, so it was kind of like, okay, the natural assumption is that if you're going to be good at English, it's going to be a lawyer, it's going to be, in fact, I can't think of anything else. It was going to be a lawyer, and that was it, right? And so that's exactly what I went on to pursue. But obviously, in being rejected from Warwick in that, I kind of had to reassess my motives, like why do I want to do law? I remember in sixth form itself, like going to like these open days for law, and genuinely, if I'm honest, feeling relatively bored. Like, sorry y'all, I just had to say it. I was relatively bored, like during the discussions. They gave us like this thing, so I went to one with like a really top university, like one of the highest Russell Group universities, and they did like an open day, and like they gave us like a case study to read and like all of that. And I just remember being bored all throughout. And then obviously after that, they kind of spoke to us a little bit about like what it's like studying law, and then what it's like applying for law jobs and what actual law jobs are like. And they were saying things like, oh, like, you know, you're going to be in the office for significant periods of time, but it's because you're working on something that you love, big acquisitions with like Google and all of these companies. And like, yeah, you're like, if you've ever watched Suits, like it's a little bit like that, but you're working a lot longer. Like, they didn't say that, but like it was heavily implied. And if you chat to them after and you're like, okay, like, are you working like all the time? They'll be like, yeah. Like they'll literally be like, yeah. And I kind of realized that like, if I'm bored now and I don't think I fully enjoy this now, how am I meant to actually dedicate like a whole good 60 to 70% of my life during the week on this, on a date, like for a really elongated period of time? And I kind of had to try and keep convincing myself like, no, Tinu, you're gonna love it, it's gonna be fine. But I think the fact that I didn't even get into the law course in the first place, to me personally, acted like a little bit of a sign that, girl, maybe we might need to reevaluate. And reevaluate is exactly what I did. During the pandemic, it was a massive time for everyone to start researching new skills. And like I mentioned, because I didn't get into this law course, I started reevaluating whether or not I actually genuinely wanted to do law. And I started looking at other avenues in which one could make money. And I came across this idea called rent to rent. And I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of a tiny bit of training in this, not training per se, but knowledge. Yeah, there we go. I realized I need to reevaluate. So I came across this idea called rent to rent. And it was basically talking about how you can get into property. Instead of buying houses, you rent houses and then re-rent them out. So rent to rent basically is where you're renting a property from a landlord and then re-renting it out higher for a profit. And that's exactly what business is overall. It's buy low and sell high. And in this case, it's rent low and rent high. An example of rent to rent is rent to rent service accommodation, which is the one that I was mainly interested in. So rent to rent service accommodation, if you guys have ever stayed in like an AP for your birthday, for the cool kids, you know what an AP is? It's like an apartment, you know, like you have your own Airbnb, you know, you go up there, it's just like a normal house or a normal apartment. You did the whole balloons thing for your friend, you did the matching pajamas, that's an Airbnb. Or if you've just stayed in one for like a long period of time, you know what it is. If you want to know what Airbnb is, literally go onto airbnb.com and like just type in like 3-bedroom house London, and then it will come up with lots of them. They're basically just normal houses. Now, how does it actually work from a business model perspective? So you're going to rent the house from a landlord. Let's just say that you're renting a 1-bedroom apartment in Birmingham city centre for £700 per month. So you'd be responsible for paying the £700 per month, and then you'll re-rent that out on a nightly basis on Airbnb, Booking.com, Verbo, etc. Let's just say for £150 a night, or we can even say, just for the simplicity of the example, £100 a night. If that property gets rented out on Airbnb and someone actually books it for at least 7 days, this might be different people, someone 3 days, someone 4 days, someone 2 days, 2 days, whatever. Even if it just gets rented out for a week, the £100 a night times the 7 days that it's been rented out is £700. So that's already enough money to pay back to the landlord. And then of course, other than that, the rest of it becomes pretty much profit once you've covered the bills as well. So conceptually, That's exactly how it works. So let's just say it gets rented out for 21 nights. So we like to be conservative that, okay, cool, like 21 out of the 30 days. You don't want to be like, oh yeah, 30 out of 30. 21 out of the 30 days. 100 multiplied by 21 is £2,100, minus the rent that you're paying to the landlord, which is £700, is £1,400, and then minus the bills. Let's just say that the bills are approximately £300-ish. Again, these are really rough examples, and you'd want to use like an actual like calculator on how to actually figure it out, but let's just say that was like £300. That leaves you with £1,100 profit on a property that you literally do not own. The concept of how it works is that you're going to pay the first month's rent, 700, to the landlord, and then you're going to pay deposit to the landlord as well, 700, that's 1.4, and then you'd maybe spend like £2,000-ish on furnishing. I actually reckon you can do it for £1,000. I really think that you can for a unit that small, and then that's how you basically make money doing rent-to-rent service accommodation. Okay, it's one of those business models that is remote. It's not passive, but it is remote. When I say remote, it means you can do it from home. So you have systems like a lockbox. If you want to know what lockbox is, literally just Google it. It's basically like a little padlock, and you can get the keys out of it. And then you also have got like a Ring doorbell and stuff, so you can actually see the guests come in and out. So when they book, you'll literally email them like the code to the lockbox, and they'll literally just put it in, and they will basically be able to take themselves into the apartment and book it. And yeah, and then of course you'd hire a cleaner as well. Like, how do you find the cleaner? Literally Google cleaners in Birmingham city centre, Airbnb, and then you will trial with one, and if you're happy, you'll keep them. So that's basically it. And so I came across this business model, and I was like, rah, this is how someone can genuinely make money with their own hands. Like, you can actually make money in this without a degree, without qualifications necessarily, like without deep referencing. This is a way that you can actually start making money in property without owning it. Because another reason that I wanted to get into law was, okay, cool, I'm a lawyer, I've got a good and successful job, right? And then I can use that to pay for a house deposit and buy my own house. But what you're telling me here with rent-to-rent service accommodation is that I don't even need to own the property to receive the cash flow. That I can actually control a property, control an asset without owning it, and do that with little to no qualifications. You're onto something, and I'm curious. And that is basically what started to spark my attention. And in the next couple of slides / videos, I'm gonna explain how I actually got involved and what specifically I got involved in, which I was able to do with very little money up front. Obviously, at the time, I was a university student. So by this stage, I've accepted my offer into the University of Warwick, and I've decided, okay, cool, I'm gonna do sociology. I'm still thinking I'm probably gonna do law, but you know, in the meantime, I'm looking at other options. So at the time, I myself didn't actually have anywhere near enough capital to actually even do rent-to-rent service accommodation in the first place. Also, actually, just to preface, there's another type of rent-to-rent. It's called rent-to-rent HMO. HMO stands for House of Multiple Occupation. And just like the name suggests, it's literally a house with multiple occupants. So in uni myself, I stayed in a HMO. It's basically like, you know, like when you live at uni, or if you know anyone who's been in uni before, and they have like a house, and like it's just a normal like terrace house. It doesn't look anything different from everything else on the street. And like they just have their own room, but they share a kitchen, and they might share a bathroom, or they might have an ensuite. That's a HMO, House of Multiple Occupation. People from different family homes or different backgrounds, individuals, all living under one roof but sharing common facilities. That's what a HMO exactly is. Now, you can do rent to rent for that as well. So you are renting that property from the landlord. So let's just say it's in Coventry, because Warwick is in Coventry, a 4-bedroom house. The landlord wants £1,400 in rent, for example, or £1,500 in rent, and then each room is en suite. You would then re-rent that out on like Spare Room, Gumtree, I think Facebook as well, you can put it on there, but mainly Spare Room. And then you would rent it out per person per room. So if you, I think approximately in Coventry at the minute, CV1, you can get around £650 per person per room. There's 4 rooms, 650 multiplied by 4 is 2,600, minus the 1,500 that you're paying to the landlord, is whatever that is, and then minus the bills, you're probably going to make around £800 profit. So if you want to do service accommodation, which is the Airbnb one, you need to have a relatively high risk appetite, because like there are times where it does really, really well. Overall, it does really well, because there's always going to be people that want to stay in a service accommodation. Like, for example, if you're in an area where there's a lot of gentrification, so you can see that a lot of new builds are being formed, things like that. Like, those are usually built by contractors, and so those contractors are only working on those properties for a short amount of time, and so in that they're likely to want to just stay in like an Airbnb, and they'll stay long term, and they'll pay a lot of money for staying there long term, and it's bliss, it's wonderful, genuinely. So that's something that you can kind of note in terms of that. Whereas HMO, like, you know that university students are at uni for at least 9 months, so from September until June, like, you know that you're definitely going to be making like the £800 profit range. And then it works out really well because summer is the best time for Airbnb, so you can literally just put it on Airbnb after. So like, it's just so bliss. But anyway, how did I get involved in all of this whilst having pretty much no cash in the bank? Now, I got involved through a property method called property deal sourcing. Okay, so I started my business in property deal sourcing. So deal sourcing is basically a middleman strategy where I am helping people who do rent to rent. So let's just say in this example, we've got a lady called Sally. I like the name Sally. It's just nice and easy to remember. Sally has a rent to rent service accommodation business, aka Sally does Airbnb. Sally has a really strong Airbnb business in Birmingham city centre. She's got, you know, apartments all throughout. Your job as a property deal sourcer is simply to work on behalf of Sally to find her more properties for her rent to rent business. It is literally that simple. You essentially become a personal shopper to people who do rent to rent. And in this case, Sally becomes your client because you are representing Sally, and also Sally is your investor because she is the one investing in the deal, okay? So that first month's rent and deposit that we were talking about in the previous example of a Birmingham property, like the £700 rent, £700 deposit, that won't be paid by you as a deal sourcer, that is paid by Sally because you are finding it for her. So it's basically like a glorified virtual assistant role. You will be basically, as a deal sourcer, cold calling landlords and agents on behalf of Sally, looking for more empty properties in the region that she said that she wants, which is Birmingham in this particular example, that she can actually take on for her own rent to rent portfolio. So how it would work, you'd meet someone like Sally, most likely on Facebook. There's like a couple of group chats on there. One thing I would say in terms of meeting investors, human beings congregate around like-minded human beings. That's like a phrase that I've been absolutely loving recently. Just like, I'm a Christian, so on Sundays I'll be found with other Christians in church. If you like sports, you're most likely going to be part of a sports club, or, you know, play sports or be a part of a team, support a team, Manchester United, Arsenal, etc. Human beings find commonalities amongst people who are similar to them. It works exactly the same in property. There are multiple group chats online, specifically on Facebook, in which I joined and kind of was able to meet these people, and they actually reveal themselves 9 out of 10 times. They'll be like, hey, I'm looking for a deal sourcer, I'm looking for a 2-bedroom Birmingham city centre, I'm looking for a 1-bedroom Manchester, and then you just basically liaise with them, connect with them, and basically become their property deal sourcer. So it is literally like, when I say that it is simple, it is very, very simple. Like, it is that simple, okay? There's a bit more to it, I would say. It's simple, but it's not. But I'm leaning towards saying it's simple. But that's what I did. So you basically become a personal shopper to the person who wants to do rent to rent. Your role is to find them more empty properties and convince landlords and agents on their behalf as to why they should give that property to Sally, who does a Airbnb business, as opposed to let's just say John, who wants to live in there for like a year or whatever. One of the main convincing points, though, I will give you guys this as a tip, is that because it's a service accommodation business, so with this example, we're obviously using Sally, who does like rent to rent service accommodation. With that, she is going to have to keep that property in immaculate condition, because imagine someone who's a prospective guest for Sally's business comes to the property and like there's dirty stuff in there from like the night before, the sheets are undone, there's like, it's smelling, the bins are not taken out. Like, people are going to keep leaving Sally bad reviews and her business is going to shut down. And so that's why it's a win-win situation, a win-win scenario, because obviously as part of that business model of doing it for rent to rent service accommodation, she is going to have to keep that property in pristine condition, and that's one thing that you can guarantee the landlord. I'm going to talk about how I even scaled it, because I now have another business that I actually started from my sourcing business. It's literally incredible, guys, because the landlord is getting a win-win situation because they're getting a property that's like 10 times more cleaner. Now, one thing I will say, when it comes to having tenants in there who are just like normal tenants, they're living in there, the landlord cannot guarantee the condition of the property. I know this because I've been speaking to a landlord recently. He showed me pictures of the property that he wanted to give to me, and it literally was covered in mold, covered in mildew, covered in damp. You know, you can't control whether the tenants are clean. Like, trust me, I've been to uni and I've seen some people who are unclean, and we didn't have cleaners like that to be coming in and out. Whereas with this, there are guaranteed cleaners, because I can't lie, nobody's trying to come to the property and like it's just looking one type of hellish mess. Okay, so it's all about creating what I like to call the window of the win-win. So creating a win-win scenario for the landlord, like, okay, cool, let me give it to your client Sally's properties because my property is going to be kept in better condition, and also a win-win for the client because they've now got a property to invest in, and now they're making upwards of maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 turnover a month on a property that you found them. Now, this is how you're going to get paid as a deal sourcer. Believe it or not, friends and family, when you successfully find them a property that meets their criteria, they will pay you a £3,000 sourcing fee. This is when I knew I hit jackpot. Because at the time I was working agency in uni, and it's a very common thing to do, like you're in and out of lectures, etc. I was working agency in uni and I was being paid around the £8 to £9 an hour. When I saw on my timesheet that they were happy to pay me £9.50 an hour, that's when I was even rejoicing. I was even praising God. Little did I know I was still stuck in Egypt. Literally, I was still stuck in Egypt. I didn't know I was in Egypt, okay? And that there was a promised land right here. I was so challenged by God, like, what is actually in my hands right now? What can I do right now with where I am in uni that can actually make money and actually genuinely be successful? Like, what do I have right now in my hands? And I realized what I had was time. That was what I had. The greatest asset that I had in life at the period of time of being a uni student, and even now, was time. It was literally time itself. Because someone like Sally's Properties, who is building a really successful Airbnb business, doesn't necessarily have the time that I have to sit on the phone to landlords and agents and convince them as to why she should take on that property instead of someone else, right? Whereas I have got the time to do that, and I basically act as like an independent investment property agent on her behalf, finding her properties. Now, I didn't just do this for Sally's Properties, I did this for multiple other investors at the same time, which is why I was able to secure a pretty decent income from this at the time as a university student, like while studying my undergraduate degree in my final year of uni. That's when things really popped off for a kid. Things really popped off in third year. That's when it popped off for me. It's at the time, third year uni, working agency jobs, like I was really not, it was not giving happiness. I used to work like waitressing stuff, so they'd put me in like hotels and I would be there like until 3 a.m. because people would have functions. I would tell my boss like, hey, listen, I'm not really comfortable staying past this time. Like, people would be saying things to me like, oh, when do you get off? I'm going to be waiting for you. Just making me really, really uncomfortable. Bear in mind that this hotel that I was working at was in the middle of nowhere, so like if someone wanted to, you know, do something nasty to me, I was just so worried, and like they didn't really give a heck at all. So when I realized, okay, cool, I can actually use what I have in my hands right now to actually start getting into property, it was an absolute no-brainer. It was a no-brainer. So your role is literally to find empty properties on their behalf, convince landlords and agents why they should go for Sally's Properties in this scenario, or if they have a HMO business, why they should go for Harry's HMO business instead of, you know, renting out to individual students. One of the reasons for that is, well, you're getting a rental from one company, they're paying you a set rent every single month, so you know how much is coming in, and they're handling all of the stress of the actual students themselves. Whereas if you do it yourself and you're renting it out to each student, let's just say there's 4 of them and they all have different requirements, they're all messaging all the time, they all have different things, it's more headache for you. So with the company who's going to rent it out, it's just a single payment every month and it's just bliss, right? So essentially that's what my role was. And every time I successfully found a property that met their criteria and they actually took on that property, as in signed on the dotted line with the landlord or estate agent that, yep, they've taken over that property, I would then make a £3,000 finder's fee. Why? Because again, the people who are doing rent to rent in the first place are doing this so that they can also leave their jobs as well, or they're doing this to build their business. I'm essentially a portfolio builder as well, because I'm helping them build their rent to rent portfolio, and I am remunerated accordingly with a £3,000 fee. Now, at the time in university, this is where I was like, you know what, law is not for me at all, because I'm making at some months more money than like a high street solicitor for a lot less work. So in between my university lectures, let's say I had a 9 a.m. and then in between that I had like 2-hour break, and then I'd have like an 11 a.m. In that 2-hour break, as soon as my 9 a.m. was done, in fact, lecture will be 9 till 10, then I'll have 10 until 12. In that interim there, I would basically do like a semi-Pomodoro technique, where part of it is your university work that you're doing, then part of it is your deal sourcing work. And it works well because by the time you've contacted these agents and landlords in the morning, they might not respond back until a little bit later on, and then in that time, that's where you can crack on with other tasks. So this is not just for uni students, anyone can genuinely do this. Like my students now are a range of different, some of them had like a 9 to 5, some of them didn't, but like they're killing it now, and I can't wait to talk about their results, because I can't lie, that's gonna come in the next couple of segments. But yeah, that's what I was doing, and every single time I would make a £3,000 fee, or something there or thereabouts if I did a discount, and like I was turning over between £3,000 to £9,000 a month whilst in university. Yeah, it was incredible. Sometimes you do what's called co-sourcing. So that's basically where you'd collaborate with another deal sourcer. So let's just say you've got the client, which is Sally's Properties, who wants a Birmingham property, but then someone else says, hey, I've actually got a Birmingham property already. The landlord is willing to do, have someone in there who does an Airbnb business. We'd collaborate together. I'll bring Sally, they'll bring the deal, Sally looks at the deal, she likes it, they move forward, and then we'll split that finder's fee in half. So that £3,000 goes 50-50. I get 1.5 for bringing Sally, they get 1.5 for bringing the deal, and then you just keep that party pumping. And that's basically how I was living for most of my third year. Every single month, God has been so faithful, every single month until exam season, I was closing a deal. So exam season for me was around April 2023. Every single month until then, I was making money in deal sourcing, and it was absolutely incredible. It was absolutely incredible because I realized that I can genuinely control how my time is spent. And not only was I working less, I was a lot more freelance. So even when I was traveling, like I closed the deal whilst I was abroad. And the way I was able to do that was that collaborating sourcing method, co-sourcing. I had the client, someone else had the deal. So when the client came to view the property, they let them in, all of that. Like it was just bliss. And I realized I'd hit jackpot. Like, I have a very valuable asset, which was time, and you have a very valuable asset as well, which is time itself. The ability to actually use your time to make money. And that's where that's where everything changed for me. That's where everything changed for me.